Do you think OnlyFans has been quite a positive thing for the sex industry or the porn industry generally?
I have a love-hate relationship with OnlyFans where I love the thing it's doing for sex work in that it is kind of normalizing it. There are a lot more women speaking out in support of sex workers. And also, it's great that it puts you in control. The creator is always in control. You don't have to do anything you don't want to.
Hmm.
There's less space for exploitation. But the problem with OnlyFans is that they don't admit to being a sex worker platform. Um,
Interesting.
Uh,
Why not?
so
Do you know?
um, we are the biggest money maker for them on the platform. Everyone knows OnlyFans for that reason.
hmm.
Um, but if you look on their official Twitter and things like that, they only post about fitness instructors on there or magicians. um, they post about those things and they completely ignore the sex work side of things. So it's a weird, like, you think they promote the sex work side of it because that's the money, but they don't.
Hmm.
Have they given any reason as to why they don't want to do that? Because obviously, I wasn't even aware of that, and my perception was that this was had kind of become a platform specifically for sex workers. But why is it that they're hiding that? Because surely for them, the normalization is going to continue to make them a lot of money. So that doesn't particularly make sense to me.
Yeah, I think it's they once tried, OnlyFans tried to make an app for the iPhone, and because it's sex work, the Apple Store would not
Right.
process the app. It couldn't work. So I think they're trying to transition into being a normal platform, whatever that means. Um, so they're trying to distance themselves from the sex work aspect, but it kind of shoots them in the foot because
Mm.
they're the largest fan base.
Well, I was going to say that's kind of the problem. You touched on the word normal there. And, that's that. To me, that's kind of the where the issue begins for platforms like OnlyFans because sex work is normal. This is something that's existed for years, and this is a modern day iteration um, of sex work. Normalizing or making it more mainstream, shifting the over to window is important, and I think that's something that platforms like OnlyFans do. But if the companies themselves aren't going to take the responsibility to say, look, this is something that we're proud of, or we want to support the people involved, what is the kind of future and where is the industry going to move if those platforms don't take the kind of initiative to do that? And it's been adopted by lots of people in the mainstream, by lots of celebrities, um, not just sort of independent, I suppose, sex workers, but lots of celebrities have jumped on board.
Hmm.
If the platform themselves aren't willing to kind of own the fact that this is what their platform has become, how do you begin to move the industry forward in a kind of more normalized way?
Yeah.
It's definitely something I worry about. And I know that a lot of people in the sex worker community, especially that people have started on OnlyFans, have moved over to more sex worker friendly platforms. So there are platforms like Pocket Stars, which was made and ran by a sex worker themselves. But it's just because OnlyFans refuses to recognize its community. And they can be pretty lackluster if you're doing sex work on your page. They will ignore you if you have any issues, which is also very annoying.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I bet. Yeah,
It's funny how these platforms have that kind of like embarrassment about their platforms when they go in that direction. I'm just thinking about like not necessarily uh, platforms like OnlyFans that provide a service in a way, but platforms like or social media platforms like I'm thinking like Tumblr a few years ago when a huge portion of their content was porn, and yet they ended up removing all of it. And now, does anybody ever use Tumblr? I don't know. But then the same thing sort of happened, I think, with Reddit as well. Reddit's got a massive porn catalog or whatever you want to call it. Like so many subreddits dedicated to different types of porn, but they've started implementing new measures to sort of hide it away so that people can't stumble upon it. They already had like censorship things you could tick in the settings, so like it wouldn't show you that kind of content. But now they've sort of removed it. I think from the r/all page. Sorry, it's strange that there's this embarrassment around it, right?
It's a very taboo subject,
Mm.
and I think especially with the this new, it's kind of a debate between the Nordic model and decriminalizing sex work. I think it's only going to come up more and more, because people don't want to talk about sex and they don't want to talk about porn. They want to keep it to the back shelf kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your view on those kinds of forms of regulation slash deregulation of the industry? I mean, I'm just interested to know what your view is on, in an ideal world, what direction do you think the UK should move towards?
I am definitely 100% against the Nordic model. I just think that the idea that criminalizing people that buy sex will ever translate into creators, it just puts them in more danger because then we can't go to police officers and tell them about any exploitation we face because our whole base is criminalized. And there's this idea that the Nordic model will have an exit strategy out of sex work for people, but these exit strategies never come to fruition. It's so in 2015, Ireland operated their first Nordic model, um, and it's been 2 years they haven't had an exit strategy for these women. They're just penalized more. I think the best way forward is to just decriminalize, because from that point onwards, you can do more with your work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I would totally agree. I mean, there's so many examples of kind of the prohibition of these industries not working, whether you look at alcohol prohibition or drug laws that exist at the moment, or laws or lack thereof surrounding the sex industry. Even places like, you look at the laws in Amsterdam, which are currently being reformed. There's a lot of work reforming the rules around the red light district, etc. These things are open to exploitation at all times. If you don't legislate and you just leave these things to be run by those in the black market, by gangs, the levels of exploitation that exist are huge, and you're leaving these individuals in, like, I mean, as you'll know, in extreme vulnerability. And it's our responsibility to accept the fact that these industries are always going to exist and support the right for them to exist. You know,
Mm.
protect these workers as much as we possibly can. And the fact that, you know, for whatever kind of puritanical reasons we don't want to accept that, and we don't want to move the industry forward, is, I think, is neglecting the responsibility of government. um, I mean, do you have kind of a positive outlook on the future of the industry in terms of the laws surrounding it?
I really support Decrim now. It's a really good organization, and they've got the backing of Amnesty International and the World Health Organization, and they're really making big strides, especially in the UK. But the ideas of people like Labour MP Diana Johnson and Jess Phillips, who are trying to make sex work illegal and the purchase of sex illegal, it's just going to bring the conversation way back in time. I feel like we're stepping back into it being more and more taboo, especially in British politics. And I think
Yeah.
that's going backwards. So I'm hoping that Decrim now will come back and there'll be more support of it. Hopefully, if people keep talking about it, especially in Labour places. Um, but yeah, it's a nuanced subject.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's kind of a little bit. I spoke about this topic of sort of where the government's uh, priorities lie in terms of sex education or regulating the sex work or pornography or whatever. And to me, I get it feels quite cowardly of them to not look it straight in the eye. It seems very like, obviously there's a stigma and a taboo around it, but the politicians are in there where they are because they have to answer the tough questions, right? They have to deal with the difficult problems, and I don't even think this one is particularly as difficult as some others might be, but obviously we have it's ingrained in our society still slightly that talking about sex openly is taboo, or talking about sex work is taboo, and for some reason politicians are. I didn't realize Jess Phillips was advocating for making sex work illegal. slightly
Yeah.
worrying. But
I think it's the problem with the Nordic model is if you're not open to the idea of sex work as a normal part of your life, if you don't know it that well. So a lot of my friends, like, they know OnlyFans, they've read my tweets, stuff like that. But if you don't know a lot about sex work, then your view of sex work is kind of like this behind the back of the bushes, handing over money sneakily, brothels ran by like drug lords. It's very like old fashioned. So the idea of the Nordic model being to just criminalize people that buy sex sounds really great. But if you actually enact that, there's no way of criminalizing the people that buy sex and not criminalizing the people that perform the acts that are there. There's just no way. It's just a flaw of the argument.
Yeah, and it comes back to the fact that I genuinely don't think that we should be criminalizing people wanting to pay for sex. I don't think that that's any business of any government, and it's so bizarre to me that particularly this Conservative government and Labour politicians backing stuff like that just boggles my mind. I'm a member of the Labour Party as well. It just shocks me that that's the position that the Labour Party's in this day and age. But sort of besides that, this view that the government should be interfering in people's personal lives in that way, it's absolutely none of their business. And what they should be doing is protecting the interests of citizens as much as they possibly can. So I think morally, both sort of the common sense argument, the legal argument, the moral argument, all point in the favour of working towards properly regulating this industry to ensure that people are safe, ensuring that access is safe, ensuring that there is safeguarding, ensuring that there is exit strategies for people that want to leave the industry, that there is support. All of this stuff is completely sensible. But just like the drug legalization debate, we aren't having a sensible debate because these things aren't being debated in good faith, right? They're being debated in real poor faith. And that's what kind of frustrates me. And we haven't even touched necessarily on the sort of misogyny element of these industries, going back to Parliament and government not wanting to legislate or over legislating the porn industry or over legislating in sex work, when something like 80% of the computers in Parliament in the House of Commons have accessed porn sites. That's the kind of hypocrisy that we're looking at.
Is that actually a thing?
Yeah.
I do find it funny because my Twitter is kind of the intersection between sex work and politics. I do get a lot of counsellors and stuff on my OnlyFans that I won't ever disclose because that's very private. But it is funny that people kind of assume that it's just one group of people, like young men online. It's really not. And yeah, it's an interesting subject.